What's up, folks, and welcome to episode 2 of the Hack With Me series, where we'll be covering search skills. Just a quick intro. I went into this room, and they call their sections rooms. So if you hear me say room, that's what I'm talking about. I went through this room thinking that it was going to be a bunch of things that I already knew, and it was going to be a breeze, and it would be even quicker of an episode than I'm planning to do. There were a few things that I learned that were very useful or will be very useful going through this journey, trying to complete this course to get this cert. And there were a few things that I found useful for, normal search engines and stuff like that, that I didn't know, which would include query parameters that you can add towards or add within your search to isolate and refine what actually comes up. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So in this room, we'll be going over a handful of things, and that's the evaluation of information sources, the use of search engines efficiently, exploring specialized search engines, reading technical documentation, making use of social media, as well as checking news outlets. And again, most of these topics I pretty much use on the day-to-day in my normal job, specifically reading technical documentation. I don't do it every day, but when I need to learn something new, that's the first thing we go to. We'll be covering a little bit more in detail on that later on. That's task 6, but we'll start at the very top, and that's the evaluation of search results. So for this task, we just went over how to effectively evaluate the information that we ingest from our searches. So here are a handful of things to consider when evaluating information. And this is coming straight from the lesson, or the task, I should say. So a source. So you identify the author or organization publishing the information. Consider whether they are reputable and authoritative on the subject matter. Publishing a blog post does not make one an authority on the subject. And I can't stress that enough when it comes to the digital age of information that's being put on social media, where a lot of people in social media think that they are a reputable resource to get information from. And a lot of them are regurgitating things that they picked up from reputable journalists that actually do articles, and they're just making quick videos for, the attention. Some of them are just making these videos as well to inform people, which I applaud that, but you still have to understand that a lot of these people have their biases embedded in their videos when they're pushing things out. So you have to take that information and then fact check it, or compare it against somebody else's information, or compare it against an actual article that was written up about the subject matter. So next one is evidence and reasoning. So check whether the claims are backed by credible evidence and logical reasoning. We are seeking hard facts and solid arguments. Again, we don't want to take somebody's bias and consider it fact. Next one, which I should just read these off before rambling. The next one is objectivity and bias. So evaluate whether the information is presented impartially or rationally, reflecting multiple perspectives. We are not interested in authors pushing shady agendas, whether to promote a product or to attack a rival. And the last one is corroboration and consistency. So validate the presented information by corroboration from multiple independent sources. Check whether multiple reliable and reputable sources agree on the central claim. And those are pretty much an overview of how we should ingest the information that we're getting from the searches. And this could apply to any subject or any industry, not just cybersecurity or software engineering. So the next task that we go through in this room is search engines themselves. So most people reading this will be familiar with Google and Bing, and some would even be keen to DuckDuckGo, like myself. However, I found out about the many search operators that you can use to refine your searches and get better results from these searches. And this kind of goes back to what I mentioned in my last episode of my podcast, which covered OpenAI and issues with OpenAI and how people use that as their new search engine instead of Googling. And I admitted that, my searches, when over time, they just became more and more flooded with bad information and bad articles, but this kind of corrects that. And it enlightened me that, oh, maybe I'm just not using these search engines properly. So it's not isolated to only specific browsers. Each browser has its own set of operators, and many operating systems also have their own set of search operators as well. So if you're trying to search through the Mac or Windows, you can still use search operator queries within your searches. And what we'll touch on here is the one from DuckDuckGo. But there's a GitHub repo that has collected a ton of direct links to the platform documentations of their respective search operators. So you'll have OSs, so operating systems that you can find there, but then you also have search engines, so they have like links directly to Google, links directly to Bing, and then they have links directly to DuckDuckGo. So the first one, or I think it's the only one that we'll be touching on in this episode, is the DuckDuckGo one, because I use DuckDuckGo regularly and solely. So as you can see here, here's a screenshot of how to use the advanced syntax on DuckDuckGo, and there are plenty of examples. And the one example that I'm going to cover, because I don't want to go through every single one of these examples, it'll be tedious and boring, if I have to admit. But the one that I think is actually pretty useful is the file type parameter. So for me, at least, I feel like this would be extremely useful when trying to search for research papers and white papers. And this should refine what is actually shown. We won't get any bad documentation, or we won't get any personal blogs that might be talking about the subject matter that we're looking for. And like I mentioned earlier, this partially disproves my statement about, the search engines not being a good resource these days for just Googling something and then being able to find quality search results within your query. So I encourage people to play around with some of these search operators and confirm if your results are more refined and useful for what you're searching for. Next task would be specialized search engines. So this task was my oh word moment when it came to learning things about what I can actually search for, and specific engines directly used for specific tasks. And there are so many very specific search engines that provide fantastic information and context depending on what you're looking for. And I do think that specifically for the specialized search engines that were presented in this room, these seem more useful to IT and cybersecurity engineers or enthusiasts. However, I'm sure there are other specialized search engines out there for leisure that people have created. But for this walkthrough, we'll just be going over the handful that they gave to us to look into. So the first one we'll be going over is Shodan. Shodan is a search engine for devices connected to the internet. It allows you to search for specific types and versions of servers, networking equipment, industrial control systems, and IoT devices. So IoT stands for Internet of Things. So for example, you may want to see how many servers are still running Apache 2.4.1 and its distribution across countries. So to find the answer, you can search for within Shodan Apache 2.4.1, which will return the list of servers with the string Apache 2.4.1 in the headers. That's a simple search. Again, I haven't used this type of search engine myself, but I have a strong feeling that over the course of completing this Cybersecurity 101 course, that I'll be using that for other tasks that are a little bit more in depth and trying to resolve, the questions that they give me. The next one is Census. And Census is similar to Shodan, but it focuses on internet connected hosts, websites, certificates, and other internet assets. So some of its use cases include enumerating domains in use, auditing open ports and services, and discovering rogue assets within a network. So they have a good doc for introductory use cases that's worth checking out. But some of the key use cases that they have on that doc are investigate indicators of compromise. So IOCS is the shorthand version of that. So Indicators of compromise: you find and track threat actors on the internet via the infrastructure that they're set up on. The next bullet point is enrich internal threat feeds with host and certificate data. So within that, you augment network logs with the most accurate, up-to-date public profile of the entities within and connecting to your network. The next bullet point after that is create a timeline of adversary infrastructure. So you can investigate how and when an adversary weaponized infrastructure and see the history of a compromised or suspicious host. Another bullet point is to understand the global impact of vulnerabilities across the internet. So you can conduct security research to understand the global impact of vulnerabilities across the internet, from CVEs to 0 days like SolarWinds and Microsoft Exchange. And then the last bullet point is to map your external attack surface. So investigate and view your attack surface from an external perspective by finding your internet-facing assets and evaluating them for vulnerabilities. So the introductory use case doc goes a little bit deeper into these key use cases with some examples as well to give it a little bit more context. But I won't go over them during this article or during this episode. I'm sure we will be utilizing this tool as well in the future assignments. The next specialized search engine is the VirusTotal. So VirusTotal is a website that provides a virus scanning service for files using multiple antivirus engines. It allows users to upload files or provide URLs to scan them against numerous antivirus engines and website scanners in a single operation. So they can even on the site, you can even input file hashes to check the results of previous uploaded files. So I have a screenshot here, and you can see on the screenshot that it shows the results of checking the submitted file against 67 antivirus engines. Moreover, one can check the community's comments for additional insight. From time to time, a file might be flagged as a virus or a Trojan. However, this might not be accurate for various reasons, and that's when community members can provide a more in-depth explanation. And the last engine, last but not least, that's for sure, is the Have I Been Pwned? I have used this search engine myself. This is one of the few specialized search engines that I've actually used. And the couple of reasons I've used that was due to a handful of data breaches that happened over the course of the last 2 years. And two of them were standouts to me among others, which was Discord's, as well as the national data breach that exposed, I think, nearly 3 billion people's information. I'll have a link to the synopsis and an article on that incident, but finding one's email within leaked data indicates leaked private information, and more importantly, the passwords. So many users use the same password across multiple platforms, and if one is breached, their password on other platforms is also exposed. So please, 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 for the love of God, start using a password manager and then a password generator to add that unique password within the password manager. While passwords are usually stored in an encrypted format, many passwords are not that complex and can be recovered using a variety of attacks. All right. Task 5 are vulnerabilities and exploits. So this task was pretty damn cool in my opinion. Like at least I enjoyed searching through the databases and searching through the tools to kind of find like past vulnerabilities and exploits. Again, I'm interested in trying to specialize in being a red hat hacker. So this was the one that kind of piqued my interest. We'll dive into two main tools or databases that they covered in this task. And the first one is the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures program. And then the second one is the Exploit database. So CVE for short for the first one. So you can think of CVE as a dictionary of vulnerabilities. It provides a standardized identifier for vulnerabilities and security issues in software and hardware products. Each vulnerability is assigned a CVE ID with a standardized format like CVE-2024- a unique number. So this unique identifier CVE ID ensures that everyone from security researchers to vendors and IT professionals are referring to the same vulnerability. MITRE Corporation maintains the CVE system. So for more information and to search existing CVEs, you can visit the CVE program website. Alternatively, we can visit the National Vulnerability Database, NVD for short, and I have both of those websites linked in the article. So the screenshot that I have showing here is showing the CVE 2014-0160, which was also known as the Heartbleed exploit. So the Heartbleed bug is a critical security vulnerability was a critical security vulnerability in the OpenSSL cryptographic software library that allowed attackers to exploit improperly implemented TLS heartbeat functions to access sensitive data in memory, such as private keys and passwords. So this vulnerability was publicly disclosed back in April 2014 and has since been patched in newer versions of OpenSSL. The other one is the exploit database, and there are many reasons why you would want to exploit a vulnerable application. One would be assessing a company's security as a part of the red team. So needless to say, we should not try to exploit a vulnerable system unless we are given permission, usually via a legally binding agreement. So once we have that permission to exploit a vulnerable system, we might need to find a working exploit code. So one resource is the exploit database. The exploit database lists exploit codes from various authors. Some of these exploit codes are tested and marked as verified. And in the screenshot, you can see a handful of entries for the Heartbleed exploit. That's pretty much it for these two systems. And again, these were the two main tools that people were using. I plan on using these a lot just to kind of mess around and try to figure out like other exploits that might have happened in the past that I didn't know about, and maybe I should try to protect myself against. So the next task is technical documentation, and I'm going to combine this one with the task after that, which is social media, because I feel like we don't need to go too deep into the use of social media. That one would have been a little too short. And the technical documentation, there's not really much to talk about other than looking at technical documentation. So when it comes to tech docs, you can go from coding languages and frameworks like Python and Svelte. Python is a language that I use a lot on my side stuff, and Svelte is also a framework that I use on my side projects, which I use TypeScript as my coding language within Svelte, but that's pretty much a superset of JavaScript. So we can just call it JavaScript, I guess. So Python and as one of the core languages that I use, and then also Svelte, which is a framework for JavaScript and TypeScript. But technical documentation for those, as well as technical documentation for ecosystems of hardware. And a good example for that is Apple. Apple has a landing page or a manual page that has a bunch of the tech docs for all of its specific hardware. And within these, you will find well-organized documentation of its software or hardware. So these official docs, they provide a reliable source of information about the software or product features and functions. These docs should be the first stop for trying to learn about the product or software that you're using. And then on top of that, you can extend by looking up third-party documentation or third-party videos to help supplement what you learn from the official documentation. Because again, the official documentation will have everything you need to understand the technology that you're using. Just sometimes, depending on the documentation that you're reading, they might not be as user-friendly in terms of understanding. And I'll have to admit, if it's a newer technology that you're using or a newer framework or a tool that you're using, those documentations might be trash because it might be from a few developers that worked on a side project and they created documentation really quickly and they missed a handful of things that would be useful for the other user or the customer that is looking to learn a little bit more about the technology. And then when it comes to social media, there are billions of registered social media users. on platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Pretty much at this point, I think it's expected that people are familiar with popular platforms. And if you aren't, I highly recommend you get up to speed. What you can do is you can create a fake, I wouldn't say fake, but a temporary email, and then use that temporary email to create an account and then kind of explore the platform from using those credentials, because a lot of these apps won't let you explore the majority of the features without creating an account. So it's highly recommended that if you want to learn about it, you should create an account to then explore. And then after you get all the information that you're looking for, you can go ahead and delete your account, and then if need be, delete your temporary email address. And that way you don't expose your personal email or your work email to platforms that you never really plan to participate in. You just want to learn about. And that's pretty much it of what we covered. This lesson itself focused on the most common sources of information for cybersecurity professionals, I should say, enthusiasts as well. But there are plenty more that are out there that we can discover and learn about. As the information landscape keeps changing, it's impossible to cover all of the sources. However, by subscribing to relevant cybersecurity groups, you can stay ahead and be aware whenever new interesting sources arise. And that kind of like covers the news portion of it. And that's one reason why they recommend that you get to know social media, because a lot of these news sources or a lot of these groups, Discords, what have you, they do push their latest things through these platforms first, while also releasing the news articles, and you can get those notifications through the platforms instead of having to search every day for if there's a new article or if there's a new release for something related to the subject matter that you're looking for. But that's it for me. That's a quick one for today, and appreciate y'all joining, and I'll see you next time.